Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mr. Henry Agrippa. This is Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It's not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy with Book 1, Chapter 16, and probably 17. I doubt we get much farther than that. There are a lot of footnotes in these. How the operations of several virtues pass from one thing into another and are communicated one to the other. Thou must know that so great is the power of natural things that they not only work upon all things that are near them by their virtue, but also besides this, they infuse into them a like power, through which, by the same virtue, they also work upon other things, as we see in the lodestone, which stone indeed doth not only draw iron rings, but also infuseth a virtue into the rings themselves. Yes, you can impart magnetism through magnetism, right? If you attach a magnet to a piece of iron, it will be magnetized at least for a short time. Rings themselves. Footnote 1. We shall speak of the lodestone in its proper place and of the sympathy which it has with iron. This is the only metal that acquires the properties of that stone, retaining them for a length of time and attracting other iron, so that we may sometimes see a whole chain formed of these rings. The lower classes, in their ignorance, call this live iron, and the wounds that are made by it are much more severe. And this stone does not simply attract iron rings just by themselves, it also imparts to the rings a force, enabling them to do the same thing as the stone itself, that is, to attract another ring, so that sometimes a chain is formed, quite a long one, of iron rings suspended from one another. For all of them, however, their power depends upon the lodestone. Plato, Ion. Infuseth the virtue unto the rings themselves, whereby they can do the same which Austin and Albertus say they saw. We will check footnote 2 and 3. Footnote 2 is Austin. We know that the lodestone draws iron strangely, and surely when I observed it at first it made me much aghast. For I beheld the stone draw up an iron ring, and then as if it had been given its own power to the ring drew up another and made it hang fast by it, as it hung by the stone. So did a third by that, and a fourth by the third, and so until there was hung, as it were, a chain of rings which merely touched one another, without any interlinking. Augustine, City of God. Footnote 3. Albertus. Perhaps a reference to this passage in the Book of Secrets. For although we know not a manifest reason wherefore lodestone draweth it to it iron, notwithstanding experience doth manifest it so, that no man may deny it. Marvels of the world. After this manner, it is, as they say, that a common harlot, grounded in boldness and impotence, doth infect all that are near her by this property, whereby they are made like herself. Therefore they say that if any one shall put on the inward garment of a harlot, or shall have about him that looking-glass which she daily looks into, he shall thereby become bold, confident, impotent, and wanton. So, looking into a mirror will do that for you, huh? 4. And wanton. See notes 3 and 4. We've already read them. In like manner, they say, that a cloth that was about a dead corpse hath received from thence the property of sadness and melancholy, and that the halter wherewith a man was hanged hath certain wonderful properties. Footnote 5 is halter. It is said, if a rope be taken with which a thief is or hath been hanged up, and a little chaff, which a whirlwind lifted up in the air, and let them be put in a pot, and set among other pots. The pot shall break all the other pots. That is not true. Also, take thou a little of the aforesaid rope, and put it on the instrument with which the bread is put in the oven. When that should be put in the oven, should put it in, he shall not be able to put it in, but it shall leap out. Marvels of the world, and again, something that is simply not true. The like story tells Pliny, if any shall put a green lizard made blind, lizard made blind, footnote 6. Lizards also are employed in numerous ways as a remedy for diseases of the eyes. We discussed that yesterday. Some persons enclose a green lizard in a new earthen vessel, together with 9 of the small stones known as synadia, which are usually attached to the body for tumors in the groin. Upon each of these stones they make 9 marks and remove 1 from the vessel daily, taking care when the 9th day is come to let the lizard go, the stones being kept as remedy for afflictions of the eyes. Others again bind a green lizard, and after putting some earth beneath it, enclose it in a glass vessel with some small rings of solid iron and gold. When they find, by looking through the glass, that the lizard has recovered its sight, they set it at liberty and keep the rings as a preservative against ophthalmia. We talked yesterday about how sometimes the placebo effect is a real thing, right? If you believe that something can heal you, many times it can. There is no intrinsic value in imprisoning a lizard, right? There is no part of that is even really effective, right? The important part of that is your belief that it works. If it was to work, it would be entirely because of that. There is simply no way that imprisoning a lizard is going to cause your eyes to work again. And I know that's me being a little bit more incredulous than normal, but, I mean, come on. Really? If any shall put a green lizard made blind, together with iron or gold, and that's not even making, like, this part right here, making a lizard blind is probably the worst kind of torture that I can possibly imagine, right? That's akin with picking the legs off of a bug or the wings off of a bug or breaking the wings on a bird, right? It is destruction for destruction's sake, and there is nothing positive that can come from that. There is nothing positive that is going to come from the torture of another animal. Like, animals have uses. Putting them out of their misery is a thing. Eating is a thing, and those are perfectly natural things. But this is not that. This is something unnatural. This is torturing an animal by making it blind, which later on you're going to return to nature as a blind animal. What kind of a fucking asshole are you? If any shall take a green lizard made blind, together with iron or gold rings in a glass vessel, putting under them some earth, and then shutting the vessel, and when it appears that the lizard hath received a sight, shall him put out of the glass, that those rings shall help sore eyes. The same may be done with rings and a weasel. Footnote 7, and again I'm going to say no. Weasel. They say, too, that if the eyes of a weasel are extracted with a pointed instrument, its sight will return, the same use being made of it as the lizards and rings above mentioned. You can choose to torture animals if you so choose. You have free will. I will heavily recommend against it in every single instance. And a weasel, whose eyes, after they are with any kind of prick put out, it is certain are restored to sight again. So, you are saying here that if you poke the eyeballs out of a weasel and cause him to be blind, he will regenerate that. No, sir, that is not going to happen. That is you trying to justify something that is completely unjustifiable. That's what that is. Upon the same account, rings are put out for a certain time in the nests of sparrows or swallows, which afterwards are used to procure love and favor. At least you're not torturing them, even though if you put something that smells like a human in a bird's nest, you are probably going to drive the birds away. And that's going to bring us to the next chapter. That went a little bit faster than I thought it was, and this one's going to be a little bit longer. We may get to a third one, we may not. Chapter 17. How, by enmity and friendship, the virtues of things are to be tried and found out. In the next place, it is requisite that we consider that all things have a friendliness and enmity against themselves. Enmity is hatred, right? I'm going to pull up the footnote. Now it is verified and put in all men's minds that every natural kind, and that every particular or general nature, hath natural amity and enmity to some other, and every kind hath some horrible enemy and destroying thing to be feared. Likewise, something rejoicing exceedingly, making glad and agreeing by nature, marvels of the world. That is logically a thing, right? It is not necessarily a thing. It's the logic is sound, right? Fire and water are intrinsically opposite of each other. Air and earth are intrinsically opposite of each other. They counteract each other in large parts. And so that is a natural correlation to make. But, I mean, it breaks down on the higher levels, right? Like, what's the natural enmity for a lion? Another lion? Maybe a man if he's got a group. But for the most part, the lion reigns pretty supreme. There's not a natural enmity against it. That would be a natural opponent, right? It's the top of the food chain. That's the same in other instances and other places. Now, you can put that the predator and prey is a natural enmity, but that is, just trying to put something there that's not necessarily there. They don't necessarily have hatred for each other, which would be an enmity, but more of a codependency. Without the animal, there is no food, or without killing the animal, the lion doesn't eat. And if the lion doesn't kill the animal, then the animal's going to starve because it's going to overeat all of the available food. There is a natural balance that is stricken there. It's not a hateful one, it's just natural. And you can look at it the same way between the elements, right? There's no natural hatred between fire and water. They exist sometimes simultaneously. But there is a counteraction. And that's really what's being talked about, is the counteraction. Not necessarily any emotional attachment. All things have a friendliness and enmity amongst themselves, and everything hath something that it fears and dreads. That is an enemy and destructive to it. And on the contrary, something that it rejoiceth and delighteth in, and is strengthened by. So in the elements, fire is an enemy to water, and air to earth, but yet they agree amongst themselves. Footnote 2. Footnote 2 is going to say, fire agrees with air, without which it could not burn. Earth with water, without which it could not cohere. That is not an illogical conclusion. And again, in celestial bodies, Mercury, Jupiter, the Sun, and Moon are friends to Saturn. Now this is entirely things that people have extrapolated. There is no reason to believe that there is any enmity or friendship in between any of the planets. That is something that people have associated with it through years of horoscopes. I understand that, but that does not mean that it is a logical conclusion. Mercury, Jupiter, and the Sun are friends to Sun and Moon are friends to Saturn. Mars and Venus enemies to him. All the planets besides Mars are friends to Jupiter. Also, all besides Venus hate Mars. Jupiter and Venus love the Sun. Mars, Mercury, and the Moon are enemies to him. All besides Saturn love Venus. Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn are friends to Mercury. The Sun, Moon, and Mars, his enemies. Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn are friends to the Moon. Mars and Mercury, her enemies. And this is entirely upon the attributes that are placed by man upon these planets, right? The associations that we make through our assumptions of anthropomorphizing these things, right? Jupiter is not a god. It is a planet. It doesn't govern anything other than its own orbit and its moons. It doesn't have much direct influence in your life. Once again, there may be some correlation at the moment of conception and even during gestation, but it is entirely unlikely that there is a significant influence upon you at the moment of birth. That is true for all of the astrological things. I have found no reason to believe any of the astrological assumptions. None. I have looked. I have found no reason to believe it. I have done a deep dive of astrology and it proved to be fairly useless. Now, bearing in mind that this is knowledge, right? These are keys. These keys unlock other things. Right? Knowing the interaction between Mars and Venus is an important thing for interpreting other people's writings because they believe these things, right? Mr. Agrippa here, assuming, believed that these associations were true. And so when he writes later about other things, the code language that he will use will involve Mars and Venus and those attributes. And so it is a key. And it is knowledge, but that knowledge is not necessarily intrinsically linked to the planets, merely man's understanding of these traits. That's an important designation to make. Back to the text. There is another kind of enmity amongst the stars, vis-a-vis when they have opposite houses. Footnote 3. Opposite houses. Planets are assigned to certain zodiac signs which they are said to rule. Each planet has 2 signs while the sun and moon have 1 each. Here is a chart of the signs. I have this wheel is the houses. The numbers represent the number of the house. The middle ring is the various astrological signs. The third ring on the inside right here is going to be the various planets. And this middle is the sun and the moon. Just so the key is explained, right? Like you've got Cancers right here, and this is Gemini, and this is Taurus. This is going to be Venus. No. Regardless, this is Venus, I think, right here. Regardless, this is what this is representing. This is also part of the tarot video, or the astrology video, which I guess I'm going to link. For a lucid explanation on as to how each assignment arose, see Ptolemy's Tetrabiblios. Each sign has its own house comprising an arc of 30 degrees of the heavens. Thus, when a planet is in its own sign, it may be spoken of as residing in the house that it rules. When a planet is in a sign opposite its own, located 180 degrees around the heavens, it is said to be in detriment. When a planet is in the sign it rules, its operation is strong and pure. When it is in the opposite sign, its operation is obstructed and troubled. Here we have a list of the planets, their rulership and detriment. I am not going to read them. You can pause and do it yourself or check out the link below. Alright, next up. When they have opposite houses as Saturn to the Sun and Moon, how is it both? Jupiter to Mercury, Mars to Venus, and their enmity is stronger, whose exaltations are opposite. Footnote 4 is exaltations. Exaltations is, each planet has a sign in which its action is most potent, called its exaltation, and a sign in which its action is weakest, opposite its exaltation, called its fall. And again, we have another chart with the planet, the exaltation, and the fall listed out, and the link will be provided down below. As of Saturn as the Sun, of Jupiter and Mars, of Venus and Mercury, but their friendship is the strongest who agree in nature, quality, substance, and power. As Mars with the Sun and Venus with the Moon, as Jupiter with Venus, as also their friendship whose exaltation is in the house of another. 5. Footnote 5 is, since Saturn is exalted in Libra, which is one of the signs ruled by Venus, these planets are friendly to each other and so of the rest. And there you get the arbitrary designations explained. Exaltation is in the house of another as that of Saturn with Venus, of Jupiter with the Moon, of Mars with Saturn, of the Sun with Mars, of Venus with Jupiter, of the Moon with Venus. And of what sort of the friendships and enmities of the superiors be, such are the inclinations of things subjected to them in these inferior. These dispositions, therefore, of friendship and enmity are nothing else but certain inclinations of things of the one to another, desiring such and such a thing if it be absent, and to move towards it, unless it be hindered, and to acquiesce in it when it is obtained, shunning the contrary and dreading the approach of it, and not resting in or being contented with it. Heraclitus, therefore, being guided by this opinion, professed that all things were made by enmity and friendship. Footnote 6. Footnote 6 says, "As for the Grecians, their opinions are obvious and well known to everyone, to wit, that they make the good part of the world to appertain to Jupiter or Olympius, that they fable Harmonia to have been begotten by Venus and Mars, the one whereof is rough and quarrelsome, and the other sweet and generative. In the next place, consider we the great agreement of the philosopher with these people. For Heraclitus doth in plain and naked terms call war the father, the king, and the lord of all things, and saith that Homer, when he first prayed, Discord be damned from gods and human race, Iliad, we have read, little thought he was then cursing the origination of all things, they owing their rise to aversion and quarrel. Plutarch, Isis, and Osiris." Now, the inclinations of friendship are such in vegetables and minerals, as is that attractive inclination, which the lodestone hath upon iron, and emerald upon riches and favor, the jasper upon the birth of anything, and the stone acates upon eloquence. Footnote 7 is acates. I'm assuming that is an agate. It is an agate. Specifically, ribbon agate or banded chalcedony. Take the stone, which is called acates. It is black and hath white veins. I've got one of those in the other room. Book of Secrets. However, there are many kinds of agate known to the ancients. Ribbon agate is treated under onyx in chapter 24 of Pliny. The agate was not much esteemed by the Romans as jewelry, but was in high demand among the Persians and Orientals, by whom it was universally believed to confer eloquence. Thomas and Pavitt. And the stone acates upon eloquence. In like manner, there is a kind of bituminous clay that draws fire. Footnote 8. Naphtha, a natural liquid product of the earth that gives off a highly flammable, invisible gas. This is true. This naphtha, in other respects resembling bitumen, is so subject to take fire that before it touches the flame it will kindle at the very light that surrounds it, and often inflame the intermediate air also. Plutarch, Life of Alexandria. See immediately following this quotation for a description of Alexander's unfortunate experiment with naphtha, in which he set one of his Greek soldiers on fire and nearly killed him. Naphtha is an oil that rests on top of bitumen, right? It is on top of the petroleum and is highly flammable and gives off flammable gases. There is a kind of bituminous clay that draws fire and leaps into it, wheresoever it sees it. Even so doth the root of the herb apoxis draw fire from afar off. Apoxis is footnote 9, and that reads, Pythagoras makes mention, too, of a plant called apoxis, the root of which takes fire at a distance, like naphtha. It is speculated that this might be white dittany. I am unfamiliar with anything related to that, so I can't talk about what I don't know. Also, the same inclination there is betwixt the male palm and female, whereof, when the bow of one shall touch the bow of the other, they fold themselves into mutual embraces. Neither doth the female bring forth fruit without the male. Again, I am not familiar. We're going to check out the footnote and see what it says. That is footnote 10. In addition to the above particulars, it is asserted that in a forest of natural growth, the female trees will become barren if they are deprived of the males, and that many female trees may be seen surrounding a single male with downcast heads and a foliage that seems to be bowing caressingly towards it, while the male tree, on the other hand, with leaves all bristling and erect by its exhalations, and even the very sight of it and the dust from off of it fecundates the others. It would indeed be the dust from off of it, would it not? Pollen being the dust. If the male tree too should happen to be cut down, the female trees, thus reduced to a state of widowhood, will at once become barren and unproductive. I guess so. If there is no masculine pollen, there can be no eggs. So well indeed is this sexual union between them understood that it has been imagined even that fecundation may be ensured through the agency of man by means of the blossoms and the down, pollen, gathered from off of the male trees, and indeed sometimes by only sprinkling the dust from off them on the female trees. That will absolutely work for pollination. If you are unaware, that is one of the ways that we pollinate many plants. We pick a flower and we touch them together. Call that herb porn if you want. Also, the same inclination there is betwixt the male palm and female, whereof when the bow of one shall touch the bow of the other, they fold themselves into mutual embraces. Neither doth the female bring forth fruit without the male. Now, that is I don't think we read that, did we? Maybe that was part of the footnote. I don't know that they interlace, right? Mimosa hostilis, when you touch it, it'll close up. There are other plants that do the same thing. Maybe it is the palm as well. I am unfamiliar. That would be a logical explanation. And the almond tree, when she is alone and less fruitful. The vines love the elm and the olive tree, and myrtle love the one the other. Also the olive tree and the fig tree. Now, in animals, and here's something that a lot of people don't know, right? I know this because I have a fig tree, and it's one of the things that I learned on the way. Fig trees like company. They like something to compress their roots. If you have a fig tree and it is not growing, or it is not putting out fruit, it may be because it is planted by itself. If you plant it next to a fence pole, it will be perfectly happy. If you plant it next to a sidewalk, it will be perfectly happy. It likes its roots to grow underneath other things. It will not, however, disrupt your sidewalk. The roots will grow underneath it. It won't break it. It's one of the wonderful things about a fig. And if you didn't know, that is some very good knowledge for growing figs. Now, in animals, there is an amity betwixt the blackbird and thrush, betwixt the crow and heron, betwixt peacocks and pigeons, turtles and parrots. Footnote 11. Footnote 11 says, on the other hand, there is a strict friendship existing between the peacock and the pigeon, the turtle dove and the parrot, the blackbird and the turtle, the crow and the heron, all of which join a common enmity against the fox. The harp also and the kite unite against the triorchis. Pliny. Now, the harp is a type of deer. A kite is a type of bird. I'm not sure what a triorchis is, but it's got something to do with three eyes, maybe? Maybe it's a rhino. I don't know. Like, that's weird. Triorchis. Whence Sappho writes to Phaon. Footnote 12. Up, down, that's what we're doing. All right, footnote 12. Oh man, that was 21. Sappho to Phaon. Towards the beginning, Sappho was a poetess of Lesbos. Phaon was a beautiful youth with whom she was in love. When he deserted her and sailed to Sicily, she threw herself into the sea from Leucate, a promontory of Arcania in Epirus. All right, back up here. Whence Sappho writes to Phaon. To birds, unlike oft times joined are white doves, and the bird that's green, black turtle loves. Again, the whale and the little fish, his guide and friendly, are friendly. Now, there is a fish that cleans whales. I'm assuming that that's what this is going to be talking about. The pilot fish. It's about 12 inches long and was well known in ancient times for supposedly guiding ships into port. It also accompanies sharks and was thought to guide the shark to its food. The shark was often confused with the whale. The shark so much resembles the whale in size that some have injudiciously ranked it in the class of cetaceous fishes. A whale is a mammal, it's not a fish. Back to the text. Neither is this amity in animals only amongst themselves, but also with other things, as with metals, stones, and vegetables. So the cat delights in the herb nip. Catnip is a member of the mint family. 14. Catnip or catmint, a type of mint, also called nep. Gerard says of it, "Cats are very much delighted herewith, for the smell of it is so pleasant to them that they rub themselves upon it and wallow or tumble in it, and also feed on the branches and leaves very greedily." That is a true thing. Cats love them some catnip. Cats delight in the herb nip by rubbing herself, upon which she is said to conceive without a male. That is false. And there be males in Cappadocia. 15. That is the area of Greece. Cappadocia, mares in Cappadocia. Love leads mares beyond Garagas and across the roaring Ascanius in Cappadocia. They pass ridges of mountains and swim across streams, and as soon as ever their kindled hearts have caught flame, in spring chiefly, for in spring warmth returns to the limbs, they all stand on high rocks with their faces turned to catch the zephyr and snuff the light breezes, and often without wedlock are impregnated by the wind. And again, that is not a thing. They were so caught up in these things having no sex and still reproducing, and that's not a thing for most things. Like, there are a few things that reproduce of themselves, but that is by far the vanishing minority. That expose themselves to the blast of the wind and by the attraction thereof conceive. Again, not true. So frogs, toads, snakes, and all manners of creeping poisonous things delight in the plant called passflower, of whom the physicians say, if anyone eat, he shall die laughing. Frogs, toads, and snakes. Frogs and toads do have some venomous varieties, but for the most part they are not poisonous. Let's see what this passflower, called by Gerard Pasquieu flower. They flower for the most part about Easter, which hath moved me to name it Pasque flower, or Easter flower. The purple anemone, or narcotic, acrid, poisonous plant, with wide, bell-shaped, purple-blue flowers, not to be confused with the passion flower. And so, it is a toxic flower. I am unfamiliar with the genre, so... Sorry. The tortoise, also, when he is hunted by the adder, eats organium, and is thereby strengthened. Let's see what organium is. Wild marjoram. Organy, given in wine, is a remedy against the bitings and stingings of venomous beasts. Gerard. And they said that when the snail is poisoned, it eateth a herb called originium, and is healed. And therefore they know that the herb called originium hath lain under poison. Okay, that is a illogical conclusion on multiple levels. First off, how do you know that the snail ate a poison? How do you know that the other plant healed him? You don't. You have no clue. You are making assumptions. Is it possible to poison a snail? Yes. Is it possible that you poisoned a snail? Yes. Is it possible that the poison that you used to poison the snail was not poisonous to the snail? Yes. And the stork, when he hath eat snakes, seeks for a remedy in organium. I'm going to assume that's the same thing. And the weasel, when he goes to fight with the basilisk, eats rue. And whence we come to know that the originum and rue are effectual against poison. And again, that is making an assumption. Now, the basilisk is a type of poisonous lizard. I'm not sure which particular one they're talking about. It has been several through history. And it is possible to become poisoned by several of the lizards, right? The Komodo dragon for one, the Gila monster for another. It is entirely possible. But it is entirely possible that the weasel is immune to those poisons naturally, and therefore the rue had no influence whatsoever. Some of the predators are naturally resistant to those things. This appears... The weasel is poisoned by the serpent it eated. Yeah, this is just a reiteration. Rue is Ruta gravoliens, a perennial evergreen shrub with bitter, strong-scented leaves, called herb of grace because it is used for sprinkling holy water. Bitter rue, a worthy gruse, meckle of mirth and virtue is. Dioscorides writeth that the 12th penny weight of the seed drunk in wine is a counter poison against deadly medicines, or the poison of wolfsbane, ixia, mushrooms, or toadstools, the biting of serpents, stinging of scorpions, spiders, bees, hornets, and wasps. It is reported that if a man be anointed with ayusi of rue, these will not hurt him, and that the serpent is driven away at the smell thereof when it is burned, insomuch that when the weasel is to fight with the serpent, she armeth herself by eating rue against the might of the serpent. Okay, so there are allergies, right? Spiders, bees, scorpions, hornets, and wasps, for the most part, are not dangerous. They are painful, but some people are allergic to them, and it can cause anaphylaxis. There are many remedies available in nature to anaphylaxis. I am going to assume that this particular bitter herb is one of those particular things. Now, that is entirely an assumption I am making based upon this. Now, there is no correlation whatsoever between an insect sting and a poison that you imbibe from eating a poisonous plant, or being injected with a venom from an animal, right? There are differences in bites, there are differences in plants, there are differences in stings. All of these things affect in a different way. The anaphylaxis comes from your immune system reacting in a poor way to it and overreacting and causing distress within yourself. It is entirely possible that rue counteracts anaphylaxis. That is the most likely explanation that I can think of, but it is entirely in the realm of speculation. So, alright, back to the text. So in some animals there is an inbred skill and medicinal art. For when the toad is wounded with a bite or poison of another animal, he is wont to go to rue or sage and rub the place wounded, and so escapes the danger of the poison. And again, that can be explained by the exact same thing I said. There can be an anti-venom, there can be an antitoxin involved in it, but if it was true that this plant counteracted poisonous venom from a snake, we would not be milking snakes for anti-venom. We would be growing plants. So men have learned many excellent remedies of diseases and virtues from things from roots. And we do create, right? Benadryl is a derivative of a plant, and it may be rue. I am unfamiliar. But we do that. We extract from the plants things in order to counteract. We make Benadryl out of something. If it was effective to distill this particular plant to guard against bites from a venomous animal, we would have that in practice. I guarantee that. There is a 0% chance that we would be milking snakes to create anti-venom. So swallows have shown us that celandine, which is very medicinable for the sight. Footnote 21. Let's check that one out because I am unfamiliar with that word altogether. Celandine, greater celandine or swallowwort. The swallow has shown us that the calendoria is very serviceable to the sight by the fact of its employing it for the cure of its young when their eyes are affected. You know that the eyes of the bird are affected how? It is by the aid of this plant that the swallow restores the sight of the young birds in the nest, and even as some persons will have it, when the eyes have been plucked out. Again, patently untrue. This belief arises from this Dioscorides, who says that blindness in swallows is cured this way. The herb Calendonia, it was confused with the stone Calendonia, or swallow stone, so called because it is swallow color. See Pliny. Seeking with eyes that wondrous stone which the swallow brings from the shore of the sea to restore the sight of its fledgling. Longfellow, Evangeline. All right, back to the text. All right, medicinal for the sight with which they cure the eyes of their young, and the pie, when she is sick, puts a bay leaf in her nest and is recovered. See footnote 22, which is going to be another no. The Laurelus nebolus, which is the most common bay plant that we use for our seasoning. Old Bay is constituted with this. It was into this tree that Daphne was changed by her father, the river Peneus, to escape the lust of Apollo. The leaves of the bay are much used as a catalyst for other magical objects about which they were wrapped. If the foot of it, mole, be wrapped in the leaf of a laurel tree and be put in the mouth of a horse, he will flee for fear. Maybe. Right. If you wrap the foot of a mole and then put it into the mouth of a horse, he will probably run. That is probably a thing that will happen. The bay and the laurel are the same. And back to the text. In like manner, cranes, dolls, partridges, blackbirds, page their nauseous stomachs with the same. Footnote 23. Alright. Wood pigeons, jackdaws, blackbirds, partridges purge themselves once a year by eating bay leaves. You know that. You absolutely did track a bird. A particular bird, not many. Just one even. Every single day for the entirety of his day through the woods to see what he ate. You did that. You absolutely did that, Pliny. You absolutely bore witness to the fact that once per year, these particular birds eat this one particular plant in order to purge themselves. You absolutely empirically figured that out. I hope you picked up on the sarcasm there. Alright, blackbirds purge their nauseous stomachs with the same, and which also crows allay the poison of the chameleon. And the lion, if he be feverish, is recovered by the eating of an ape. Really. Now, there is a little bit of an overlap of the habitats of these particular animals, but it is not much of one. The lions tend to stay towards the savanna and out of the undergrowth. The primates tend to stay in the undergrowth and off of the savanna. Footnote 24, eating of an ape. The only malady to which the lion is subject is loss of appetite. This, however, is cured by putting insults upon him, by means of the pranks of monkeys placed about him, a thing which rouses his anger. Immediately he tastes their blood and he is relieved. Alright, we're gonna make an assumption about this, right? They took a lion into captivity and they didn't want to eat. They put it in a zoo and it was depressed because they did not have the correct habitat and it wasn't active. It's also a wee bit nocturnal, not entirely, but a wee bit. And so they didn't see it being active. And so they surrounded it with some monkeys, and the monkeys were throwing shit at it, and the lion got pissed off and grabbed an arm. That is an explanation for this. It is the only logical one. Right? Now, there could be variations of that. It could not have been a zoo. It could be a menagerie. Right? There's other things that it can be, but most likely, like, lions don't get cancer. They don't suffer from diabetes. Did you know that is a thing in other places in nature? It's not just us. Other animals have that same problem. It is less likely in nature than it is for us with our processed consumables, but it does happen. They don't develop tumors. They don't develop mange. They don't develop toothaches. The only thing that they ever have a problem with, they don't want to eat. That's it. And if you surround them with monkeys and the monkeys fuck with them, they'll be perfectly fine. Absolutely. Absolutely. When they would denote a feverish man who cures himself, they depict a lion devouring an ape. For if, when in fever, he devours an ape, he recovers. I thought he only suffered from not wanting to eat. Now he's suffering from a fever? And yes, I know that is two separate references, but they are both equally stupid. The lapwing, being surfeited with eating of grapes, cures himself with southernwood. Footnote 25. Most of our time is going back and forth. Artemisia arboretum, a deciduous shrub. I'm glad you gave us some clarification there. Alright. So the hearts have taught us that the herb dittany is very good to draw out darts. Because, that's what happens is you shoot a deer with an arrow and they go and get a tree and the tree takes the arrow out. 26. Dittany. Dittany of Crete, Oreganum dictaminus or Dictaminus creticeus. A hot, sharp herb with cottony leaves and small red purple flowers, long famed for its power of expelling darts. Venus, distracted by her son's unmerited agony, plucks from Cretonida a stalk of dittany with downy leaves and feathery purple bloom. Well known as the plant to the wild goats when winged arrows chance to fix deep in their body. Borrowing shamelessly from Virgil, Tasso writes, But the angel pure that kept him went and sought divine dictaminum out of Ida wood. This herb is rough and bears a purple flower, and in his budding leaves lie all of his power. Kind nature first upon the craggy cliff bewrayed this herb upon the mountain goat, that when her sides a cruel shaft hath rift, with it she shakes out reed out of her coat. It is reported likewise that the wild goats and deer in Candy, when they be wounded with arrows, do shake them out by eating of this plant and heal their wounds. There are plants that have medicinal values, and even animals do recognize them, but none of the plants are going to be able to pull a dart out of an animal. It is not even going to be able to cause it to leave, right? If it is not deep, then the wound will eventually fester and push it out. But if it is deep, it will just fester and fester. It will not push it out. Right? If you get a splinter and it's in your hand and you don't dig it out yourself, over time there will be a little bit of an infection. It'll get a little bit red. There'll be a little bit of a pus that develops, and then it will expel the foreign body. Your body does that. Animal bodies do that. But if it is an arrow and it is halfway through the body, it's not going to do that. For they being wounded with an arrow, cast it out by eating of this herb. The same do goats in Candie. So, hinds, a little before they bring forth, purge themselves with a certain herb called mountain osier. Footnote 27, and once again you did follow around these deer to make sure that this is a thing. Mountain osier is a water willow, used for basket weaving. Now, willow, as far as I'm aware, is the derivative that, or what we derive aspirin from, right? Willow bark is where we get aspirin from. It is an anti-inflammatory, it is a pain medicine, it is a dilator of the blood vessels. And so there may be healing properties involved, right? Whether or not this is something that they eat before they give birth is a whole different question. But willow is one of the medicinal herbs. Also, they that are hurt with spiders seek a remedy of eating crabs. Footnote 28. There is no reason to believe that this is going to be a true thing. The same animals, stags, too, when they happen to have been wounded by phalangium, a species of spider or any insect of a similar nature, cure themselves by eating crabs. Pliny. Pliny seems to be really big on relaying information whether or not he has verified it. I will venture to guess that he never followed around an animal to see it be bitten by a spider and then follow it to see how it relieved itself. Swine, also, being hurt by snakes, cure themselves by eating of them, and crows, when they perceive they are poisoned with a kind of French poison, seek for the cure in the oak. With a kind of French poison. No clarification on that. Like, what is do you know what the French poison is? Is there a poison that is unique to France? I don't know. Seek the cure in the oak. Elephants, when they have swallowed a chameleon, help themselves with the wild olive. Do you think that they followed around an elephant to see if it swallowed a chameleon? I'm not even sure that they share its habitat. I'm not sure. I don't want to say either way, but swallowed a chameleon. Footnote 29. When an elephant has happened to devour a chameleon, which is of the same color as the herbage, it counteracts this poison by means of the wild olive. And again, that is a reference to Pliny, which there is no reason to believe. I don't know that we've gotten anything accurate from Pliny yet. Bears, being hurt with mandrakes, escape the danger by eating of pismires. Footnote 30. Let's go see what a pismire is, hopefully. A pismire. They're ants. Bears, when they have eaten of the fruit of the mandrake, lick up a number of ants. That is probably an action that happened, and it is probably completely unrelated to the first instance. Geese, ducks, and such like watery fowl cure themselves with the herb called wall sage. Pigeons, turtles, or hens with the herb called pellitory of the wall. Cranes with bulrushes. Footnote 31. Now, I'm fairly familiar with a bulrush. It is a type of plant, kind of like a cattail, but not quite. Pigeons, turtle doves, and poultry purge themselves with wall pellitory or hexalane. Ducks, geese, and other aquatic birds with the plant Sudridus or vervain. Cranes, and birds of a similar nature with the bulrush. Wall sage is a species of ironwort, as said by Turner, the names of herbs, to be the Sideris prima of Dioscorides. Pellitory of the wall is a low bushy plant with small leaves and greenish flowers that grows upon or at the foot of walls. All right, back to the text. We're almost done, y'all. We're almost there. Leopards cure themselves being hurt with the herb called wolfsbane by man's dung. Boars with ivy, hinds with the herb called sonara. And we'll go ahead and read these 3 footnotes and wrap it on up. So, footnote 32, wolfbane. From the Greek for wolf slayer, plants of the genus Aconitum. Turner distinguishes 2 kinds. 1. Yellow wolfsbane, a tall, handsome plant with large, shining green leaves and beautiful yellow flowers in the shape of an enclosed bell. Aconitum lacontium. 2. Blue wolfsbane, better known as monkshood. A handsome plant with a tall stalk and large blue flowers in the shape of a helmet, for which reason it is also called helmet flower. Probably the latter is intended. Both are deadly poisons. See Hansen, who devotes an entire chapter to the lore of monkshood. 33. Man's dung. The barbarous nations go hunt the panther, provided with meat that has been rubbed with aconite, which is a poison. Immediately on eating it, compression of the throat overtakes them, from which circumstance it is that the plant has received the name Pardalayanches, pard, strangle. The animal, however, has found an antidote against this poison in human excrement, besides which it is so eager to get at them that the shepherds purposely suspend them in a vessel, placed so high that the animal cannot reach them even by leaping when it endeavors to get at them. Accordingly, it continues to leap until it has quite exhausted itself and at last expires. Otherwise, it is so tenacious of life that it will continue to fight long after its intestines have been dragged out of its body. Pliny, again. It is entirely possible that animals want to eat human feces. They eat their own sometimes. There are minerals and nutrients that they smell that they want. There is human interaction that they desire, whether that is for good or bad. These are all things. It is entirely possible that a panther was surging out human excrement. It smelled like humans. Humans are food. Back to the text, the footnote. 34. Sonara. The garden artichoke, so called according to Gerard because it grows well when planted in ashes. Sinus means ashes. The stag counteracts the effects of poisonous plants by eating the artichoke. And once again, it is Pliny bringing us some information that may or may not be true. That's going to bring us to the end of this particular part of the exploration. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of rather ridiculous topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. There's a lot of things that have been believed over time that have proven to be untrue. Many of them are contained in this chapter. Right? There are medicinal plants, and animals do seek out medicinal plants. There are medicinal earths that they seek out. Right? Diatomaceous earth is a weed killer or a pest killer. If they find naturally occurring diatomaceous earth, which is a rarity, I will grant you, they will roll in it to get rid of fleas. There are types of clay that they will eat when they have a nutrient deficiency. That is all real things. There are plants that they will eat to help them purge themselves. That is absolutely true. Whether or not it's right before they give birth is up for debate. Right? Many of these things can be true, but they are not necessarily true, and I find it highly doubtful that Pliny actually followed these animals around to determine, or that he was doing it in the correct manner if he was attempting it. Right? You don't know when a deer gets bitten by a spider. How long would you have to walk around following one deer, which, by the way, is going to be freaking impossible, to see if it gets bitten by a spider, and then goes seeks out this one particular plant to eat it to be relieved from that? That's beyond credulity. There is no reason to believe that that is true. If it is proven to be true, I will correct myself. I will come on here just as loudly as I am screaming, that is stupid, and be like, I am stupid. I don't believe that, right? I believe that I came to a natural conclusion. It seems to me that many of the things in here are completely baseless. I can be wrong. I don't think that I am. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that was said. Put it in the box down below, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me read or discuss in the manner that we are doing here, drop that in the box as well. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.